The axe froze mid-swing when Kestrel heard the cry. It wasn't the sound of any animal he knew. Not the shriek of a mountain cat or the bellow of a wounded bear. This was human, raw with pain and desperation, echoing through the dense Minnesota pine forest like a ghost's lament. Kestrel Drummond had been splitting logs for his winter store when the sound pierced through the rhythmic thunk of steel meeting wood. He dropped the axe and ran toward the sound, his massive frame crashing through underbrush that most men would carefully navigate. At 32, Kestrel had spent 15 years alone in these woods, speaking more to trees than to people, and his instincts had grown sharp as his blade. Something was terribly wrong. The cry came again, weaker now, from the direction of Whispering Lake. Kestrel's long legs ate up the distance, his heart hammering against his ribs. When he burst through the final line of birch trees, he saw her. A young Lakota woman lay crumpled at the water's edge, her traditional dress torn and muddy, long black hair spread like spilled ink across the rocky shore. Her legs were bent at an unnatural angle, and when she tried to lift herself, her face contorted in agony. "Don't move," Kestrel called out, his voice rough from disuse. He approached slowly, hands visible, knowing how his appearance might frighten her. 6 feet 4 inches of mountain man with wild auburn hair and a beard that hadn't seen scissors in months. The woman's dark eyes met his, and Kestrel felt something shift in his chest. She was beautiful, yes, but it was the fierce intelligence in her gaze that stopped him cold. Even broken and helpless, she watched him with the wariness of a cornered wolf. "I won't hurt you," he said softly. "My name is Kestrel." "What happened?" "Here?" She spoke in rapid Lakota, then switched to accented English. "My horse spooked by rattlesnake. Threw me." Her voice was like honey over gravel. "I cannot my legs won't move." Kestrel's stomach clenched. He'd seen injuries like this before, when logs crushed men in the lumber camps. Sometimes they walked again. Sometimes they didn't. "What's your name?" he asked, kneeling beside her. Carefully, Ayanna. She watched him with those penetrating eyes. "Means eternal blossom. Foolish name for broken thing." "Nothing about you looks broken to me," Kestrel said, and meant it. "Can I carry you? I have a cabin not far from here." Ayanna studied his face for a long moment. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her, because she nodded once, sharp and decisive. When Kestrel lifted her, she was lighter than he expected, all fine bones and lean muscle. She didn't cry out, though he saw her jaw clench against the pain. As he carried her through the forest toward his cabin, she remained alert, cataloging their path with the skill of someone raised in wilderness. "Why do you live alone?" she asked as they walked. "Same reason you were riding alone, I'd guess," Kestrel replied. "Sometimes solitude is safer than company." Ayanna was quiet for a moment. Then, so softly he almost missed it, "Not anymore." The cabin smelled of pine shavings and wood smoke, with undertones of leather and something Ayanna couldn't identify, something purely masculine and oddly comforting. Kestrel laid her gently on his bed, the only bed in the single-room dwelling, then busied himself stoking the fire. "You need a doctor," he said, not looking at her. "Nearest doctor is in Duluth, 3 days' ride." Ayanna's voice was steady, but Kestrel caught the tremor underneath. "I would die before reaching him." She was right, and they both knew it. Kestrel had basic medical knowledge, enough to treat the cuts and broken bones that came with lumberjack life, but spinal injuries were beyond his skill. Still, he couldn't just watch her suffer. "My grandmother," Ayanna said quietly, "was medicine woman. Taught me some things before ... double quotes, she trailed off. "Before what?" "Before soldiers came to our village. Before I ran." The words carried years of pain. She said healing comes not just from herbs, but from will, from hope. Over the following days, Kestrel transformed from recluse to caretaker. He built a makeshift bedpan, cooked simple meals, and read to her from his small collection of books. Ayanna taught him basic words in Lakota while he shared stories of the forest, of the animals that visited his cabin, of the seasons cycling through these ancient woods. "Why did you become hermit?" she asked one evening as he spooned broth into her mouth. Kestrel paused, the spoon halfway to her lips. "I was engaged once, to a woman named—" "Well, her name doesn't matter. She left me for a banker. Said she couldn't spend her life with a man who talked to trees." "Trees are good listeners," Ayanna observed. "That's what I thought." He met her eyes and smiled, the first real smile he'd worn in years, though their conversation skills need work. Ayanna laughed, a sound like silver bells, and Kestrel felt that shift in his chest again. Deeper this time. As weeks passed, something extraordinary happened. Not in Ayanna's legs, those remained stubbornly still, but in the space between them. Conversations that started practical became personal. Kestrel found himself sharing childhood memories, dreams he'd buried, fears he'd never spoken aloud. Ayanna told him about life on the reservation, about the stories her grandmother used to weave, about the husband she'd lost to winter sickness and the child who'd died with him. "I came here to die," she admitted one night as autumn painted the maple leaves scarlet. "Not from injury, from grief. My people. They see my sadness, try to help, but their help feels like pity. I needed to be alone with my ghosts. And instead you found me," Kestrel said. "Instead I found life again." She reached out and touched his hand, the first time she'd initiated contact. "You make me remember who I was before sorrow." That night, Kestrel slept on the floor by the fire, but for the first time since carrying her here, Ayanna didn't feel alone. Something was growing between them, fragile as a seedling but real as the walls around them. Snow began falling in earnest the day Ayanna felt the first tingling in her toes. She was watching Kestrel through the window as he split wood for their ever-hungry stove, admiring the fluid power of his movements, when sensation flickered through her right foot like a struck match. She gasped, staring down at legs that had been silent for 2 months. "Kestrel," she called. He burst through the door, axe still in hand, snow dusting his shoulders. "What's wrong?" "Touch my foot," she said urgently. "The right one. Press hard." He knelt beside the bed, his calloused hands gentle on her bare foot. When he pressed, Ayanna's eyes went wide. "I feel it," she whispered. "Faint, but I feel it." They stared at each other, hardly daring to breathe. Then Kestrel's face broke into a grin that transformed his entire countenance. "We need to work." "Those muscles," he said immediately, "keep the blood flowing." "I've heard—" "Kestrel." Ayanna's voice stopped him. "Come here." He moved closer, and she reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw through his beard. "When I first saw you, I thought you were spirit sent to guide me to next world. Now I know you were sent to guide me back to this." 1. The kiss was inevitable as winter, soft and tentative at first, then deeper as months of careful courtship culminated in this moment of possibility. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "I love you," Kestrel said simply. "I know it's crazy. I know we're from different worlds." "You know nothing," Ayanna interrupted, but she was smiling. "In my world, when spirits bring two souls together, we don't question. We give thanks." From that day forward, their routine changed. Each morning, Kestrel would massage Ayanna's legs, working the muscles with patient dedication. Each afternoon, he would hold her upright, supporting her weight as she tried to force her legs to remember their purpose. Each evening, they would lie together by the fire, talking, dreaming, planning. The sensation in her legs grew stronger, spreading from toes to ankles to calves. With it grew their intimacy, not just physical but emotional. Kestrel told her about his parents, killed in a mill accident when he was 16. Ayanna shared the sacred stories of her people, teaching him to see the forest through Lakota eyes. My grandmother used to say that some people are born to live in the world, Ayanna said one night as wind howled around the cabin. Others are born to create new worlds. I think maybe we are the second kind. What kind of world would we create? Ayanna was quiet for a long moment. One where Lakota woman and white lumberjack could love without shame. Where children could learn both languages, both ways. Where healing doesn't require choosing sides. It was a beautiful dream, but as winter deepened, reality intruded. Food supplies ran low. The nearest trading post was 30 miles away, and Kestrel couldn't leave Ayanna alone for the days such a trip would require. I'm burdened to you, she said one gray December morning. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, he replied. Fiercely. Don't you ever think otherwise. But they both knew something had to change. Spring was still months away, and Ayanna's recovery, though remarkable, was far from complete. She could feel her legs now, could even move them slightly. But walking remained an impossible dream. That's when the visitors came. The war party found them on the shortest day of winter. Kestrel was outside checking his trap lines when he heard horses crunching through snow. 6 Lakota warriors emerged from the tree line, painted for battle, rifles across their saddles. At their head rode a man Kestrel recognized from Ayanna's descriptions, her brother Mappa, whose name meant sky. You have something belongs to us, Mop said in careful English. Inside the cabin, Ayanna heard voices and struggled to sit upright. Through the frost-covered window, she saw her brother's distinctive war pony and felt her heart sink. She'd known this moment would come eventually. The question was whether anyone would survive it. Kestrel kept his hands visible and his voice calm. Your sister is here by choice. My sister is not able to make choices, Mop replied. She is wounded. Confused, you took advantage. He saved my life, Ayanna called from inside, her voice carrying clearly in the cold air. Map dismounted and approached the cabin, his warriors flanking him. When he entered, his eyes went immediately to his sister, taking in her obvious health. The brightness in her face, the way she reached protectively toward the white man. Ayanna, he said in Lakota, we have searched for you since the leaves turned. Our people grieve. They think you dead. I was dead, she replied in the same language. This man brought me back to life. The conversation continued in rapid Lakota, with Kestrel understanding none of it, but reading volumes in the siblings' body language. Finally, Mop turned to him. She says you wish to marry her. Kestrel glanced at Ayanna, who nodded encouragingly. Yes, if she have me, white man cannot marry Lakota woman. Our laws forbid it. Your laws forbid it. Then maybe it's time for new laws, Kestrel said quietly. One of the younger warriors spoke sharply in Lakota, gesturing aggressively at Kestrel. Mop silenced him with a look. Viaka says you steal our women like your people steal our land. I didn't steal anything, Kestrel replied. Love isn't something you can steal. It's something you give freely, or it's nothing at all. Ayanna struggled to swing her legs over the side of the bed. Kestrel moved to help her, but she waved him away. With tremendous effort, gripping the bedpost for support, she pulled herself to standing. Her legs shook with the effort, but they held. Look at me, my brother, she said in English, so both men could understand. When you last saw me, I crawled in dirt, broken by grief. Now I stand. This man didn't steal me. He gave me back myself. The cabin fell silent except for the crackle of the fire. Finally, Mop spoke. Our grandmother visited me in dream 2 nights ago. She said Ayanna's path leads away from our people, but not away from her blood. Said new growth sometimes requires new soil. He studied Kestrel with eyes that seemed to see straight through to his soul. If you take my sister as wife, you take responsibility for her happiness, her safety, her honor. You fail in this, and I will hunt you across 7 lifetimes. I understand, Kestrel said. Do you? White world will not accept her. Indian world will not accept you. Your children will belong nowhere. They'll belong with us, Ayanna said firmly. That's enough. Mop was quiet for a long time, studying them both. Finally, he nodded once. Spring, he said. When snow melts, we return. If you still choose this path, we will speak of marriage customs, of bridging 2 worlds. But first, he looked directly at his sister. You must walk to me. Not lean. Not stumble. Walk. It was 20 feet from the bed to where Mop stood. 20 feet that might as well have been 20 miles. Ayanna stood trembling by the bedpost, Kestrel's steady presence behind her, her brother's challenge hanging in the air like smoke. 20 feet to prove her healing, her choice, her future. I can't, she whispered in Lakota. You can, Mop replied in the same language. But do you want to? The question cut deeper than any blade. For months, Ayanna had focused on the physical challenge of walking, but now she understood the real test. Walking to her brother meant walking away from the safety of the bed, the cabin, the careful world she and Kestrel had built together. It meant stepping into uncertainty, into a future. That would require courage she wasn't sure she possessed. Behind her, Kestrel spoke softly. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. Not to him, not to me. But Ayanna knew better. This wasn't about proof, it was about choice. Her brother was offering her a path back to her people, but only if she could literally walk toward it. The symbolism was too perfect to be coincidence. She released her grip on the bedpost. The first step was agony. Her right leg, stronger from months of massage and exercise, supported most of her weight, but her left leg trembled like a newborn colt's. She nearly fell, caught herself, tried again. Ayanna, Kestrel said, reaching for her. No, she said firmly. I do this alone. Step by agonizing step, she made her way across the cabin floor. Her legs remembered walking the way a river remembers its course imperfectly, with detours and hesitation, but with an underlying certainty that this was the right direction. Halfway across, her left leg gave out completely. She stumbled, caught herself on a chair, stood breathing hard. In the doorway, Kestrel's fists were clenched, his whole body tense with the effort of not helping. The Lakota warriors watched impassively, but she could see respect growing in their eyes. Grandmother, she whispered to the air, give me strength. The final 10 feet were the longest journey of her life. Each step was a negotiation between will and flesh, hope and fear. When she finally reached Maipi, she was shaking so hard her teeth chattered, but she was standing without support. Her brother reached out and steadied her, his face transformed by pride and something deeper recognition. You are no longer the broken bird who flew from our nest, he said quietly. You are a hawk who learned to soar in different sky. Behind them, one of the warriors spoke rapidly in Lakota. Mop nodded and replied, then turned to Kestrel. Viyaka asks how we know you won't abandon her when White World becomes too difficult. Kestrel looked at Ayanna, still standing despite her exhaustion, and his answer came from somewhere deeper than thought. Because she just walked across this room. Anyone strong enough to do that is strong enough to face whatever comes next. And I want to be the man who gets to stand beside her when she does. Mop translated, and several of the warriors nodded approvingly. After more discussion in Lakota, Mop announced their decision. We return in spring. If you both still choose this path, we will negotiate marriage between our peoples. But know this, his gaze moved between them. Marriage will be easy part. Living as husband and wife in a world that doesn't want you together. That will test everything you think you know about love. As the war party prepared to leave, Ayana's legs finally gave out. Kestrel caught her before she could fall, lifting her easily back to the bed. But something fundamental had changed. She had walked. More importantly, she had chosen to walk toward her brother, toward her heritage, toward a future that would honor both her past and her present. "Are you afraid?" she asked Kestrel that night as they lay together listening to wind in the pines. "Terrified," he admitted. "You?" "Terrified," she echoed. Then softer, but also alive. "For first time since my husband died, I feel truly alive." Outside, snow continued falling, but spring felt closer now. Along with all its promises and perils, spring arrived with a violence of green that took Kestrel's breath away. After months of white and gray, the sudden explosion of life seemed almost aggressive. Buds bursting, flowers blooming, birds returning. With songs that made the forest ring like a cathedral, Ayana walked daily now, growing stronger with each passing week. She could manage the path to the lake, could even help with simple cabin chores, though her left leg remained weak and sometimes betrayed her at crucial moments. "I dream of dancing again," she told Kestrel one morning as they watched sunrise. "Paint the water gold?" "What kind of dancing?" "All kinds. The traditional dances of my people. The waltz I learned at mission school. Even the wild dancing I imagine people do when no one is watching." Kestrel smiled and held out his hand. "Would you like to try?" Right there on the lake shore, with mist rising from the water and loons calling. Across the distance, they danced. It wasn't graceful. Ayana leaned heavily on Kestrel's strength, and their movements were more shuffle than dance, but it was perfect in its imperfection. "This is what marriage will be like," Ayana said as they swayed together. "Not pretty from outside, but perfect for us." When Map returned in May, he brought more than just warriors. A small delegation of Lakota elders accompanied him along, with Ayana's aunt Winona, who served as keeper of marriage customs. They made camp near Whispering Lake and sent word that negotiations could begin. The discussions took 3 days and were unlike anything Kestrel had imagined. Rather than focusing on legal formalities, the Lakota elders were concerned with spiritual compatibility, with the couple's understanding of their responsibilities to future generations, with their commitment to honoring both cultures in their union. "Marriage is not joining of two people," Winona explained through Mop's translation. "Is joining of two spirits, two histories, two futures. Your children will carry both bloodlines. You understand this burden?" "We understand the gift," Ayana replied firmly. The ceremony itself blended traditions in ways that would have scandalized both white and Lakota purists. Kestrel wore his best shirt and trousers, but also a beaded vest that Winona had crafted especially for the occasion. Ayana dressed in white deerskin adorned with porcupine quills and tiny silver bells that chimed softly as she moved. They exchanged vows in English and Lakota, beside the lake where Kestrel had first found her. The promises they made were both traditional and uniquely their own. "I promise to be your companion on paths neither of us has walked before," Kestrel said, his voice carrying clearly in the still air. "I promise to stand with you when the world tries to push us apart," Ayana replied. The Lakota wedding customs required the couple to share food they had prepared together, to drink from the same cup, to walk together on a sacred fire while the community blessed their union. But perhaps the most meaningful moment came when Winona presented them with a wedding gift. "Grandmother's medicine bag," she said, placing the beaded pouch in Ayana's hands. "She told me in dream to give this to you when you found your healing path. Said it would help you heal others too." That evening, as the wedding celebration continued around the fire, Kestrel and Ayana stole away to their cabin, now truly their home. Inside, everything looked the same yet felt completely different. "No turning back now," Kestrel said, suddenly nervous. Why would we want to turn back? Ayanna asked. We are a married couple. We can do anything. What do you want to do first? She smiled, that radiant expression that had been transforming his world for months. First, I want to dance with my husband. Real dancing this time. Then ... double quotes, her smile turned mischievous. Then I want to practice making those future generations the elders talked about. They danced in their cabin by firelight, and this time Ayanna's steps were sure, her balance steady. When the dance became something more intimate, they moved together with the same patience and care that had characterized their entire courtship. Later, lying in each other's arms, they talked about their plans. They would stay in the cabin through the summer, but come fall, they planned to move closer to the reservation, where Ayanna could serve as a bridge between her people and the white doctors who were finally beginning to understand that healing required more than just medicine. We'll build clinic, she said sleepily. Place where both kinds of healing can happen. Where children can learn both languages like you said. And if the world doesn't accept us, then we make our own world. Right here. Big enough for us and our children and anyone else who needs place to belong. It was an ambitious dream, but as Kestrel held his wife in their cabin surrounded by the vast Minnesota wilderness, it felt entirely possible. 5 years later, the clinic was more than a dream. It was a thriving reality that had transformed a small corner of northern Minnesota into something unprecedented. The building itself stood at the crossroads between Kestrel's cabin and the reservation boundary, a deliberate symbol of the bridge between worlds that he and Ayanna had constructed together. Made of local timber and stone, it housed both examination rooms equipped with modern medical instruments and ceremonial spaces where traditional healing could take place. Dr. Cornelius Blackthorne, a progressive physician from Duluth, had joined their effort after witnessing Ayanna's remarkable recovery and her intuitive understanding of both Western medicine and traditional healing practices. The unlikely partnership, a white doctor, a Lakota medicine woman, and a lumberjack turned administrator had created something unique in the region. Patient load is increasing every month, Dr. Blackthorne reported as he reviewed charts with Ayanna. We're seeing people travel from 3 states away to receive treatment here. Ayanna nodded, bouncing their 18-month-old son Dakota on her hip while simultaneously organizing medicine packets. The boy had his father's auburn hair but his mother's dark eyes, and already showed signs of the same fierce intelligence that characterized both parents. More important than numbers, Ayanna said, is trust. People feel safe here. They know we see whole person, not just symptoms. Through the window, she could see Kestrel leading a group of children, both white and native, in his weekly wilderness survival class. At 37, he had grown into his role as educator and community leader, though he still preferred the company of trees to that of most people. Their marriage had not been without challenges. The first winter after their wedding, a group of white settlers from a nearby town had tried to burn down their cabin, objecting to what they called race mixing. The attack had been thwarted by an unlikely alliance of Lakota warriors and sympathetic lumberjacks, but it had driven home Mop's warning about the difficulties they would face. There had been subtler forms of resistance, too. Government officials who questioned Ayanna's medical practices, church leaders who refused to acknowledge their marriage, business owners who wouldn't sell to them. Each obstacle had required them to find creative solutions to build their own networks of support, to persist when persistence seemed impossible. But there had been victories as well. Dakota's birth had been celebrated by both communities, and their daughter Itawa, now 3 years old, was growing up bilingual and bicultural in ways that seemed to delight everyone who met her. The clinic had gained recognition from the territorial government and was being studied as a model for other cross-cultural medical facilities. "Mama, look!" Itawa burst through the clinic doors, her small hands cupped carefully around something. Papa found butterfly with broken wing. Can we fix it? Ayanna knelt to examine her daughter's treasure, a monarch. Butterfly with a torn wing that would never heal enough for migration. Some things cannot be fixed, little one. But they can still be beautiful, still be loved. Like you were broken, but beautiful? Itawa asked with the devastating directness of childhood. Like I was lost but found my way home, Ayanna corrected gently. That evening, as the family sat together on their cabin porch watching sunset paint the sky an impossible colors, Kestrel reflected on the life they had built. The cabin had been expanded twice now, growing to accommodate their children and the frequent visitors who came seeking healing or simply acceptance. Any regrets? He asked Ayanna as she nursed baby Kimimela, born just 3 months earlier. Only one, she said thoughtfully. I regret that my grandmother didn't live to see this. See her great-grandchildren. See the world we made real. Maybe she did see it, Kestrel suggested, in dreams, in visions. Maybe that's why she sent you to that lake where I could find you. Ayanna smiled. You think grandmother planned all this? I think grandmothers are capable of planning anything if it means their grandchildren will be happy. As if summoned by their conversation, May purred up to the cabin. Now in his 40s and serving as an unofficial liaison between the reservation and territorial government, he had become one of their strongest allies. The governor wants to visit your clinic, he announced without preamble. Thinks what you're doing here might be model for other territories. Politicians, Ayanna sighed. They always want to study success so they can take credit for it. Let them come, Kestrel said. If it helps other people build bridges, it's worth dealing with. Politicians. Later that night, after the children were asleep and Maeve had departed for the reservation, Kestrel and Ayanna walked hand in hand to the lake where their story had begun. Ayanna walked confidently now, her limp barely noticeable except when she was very tired. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if your horse hadn't spooked that day? Kestrel asked. No, Ayanna said immediately. Some things are meant to happen. Horse spooked because Rattlesnake was there. Rattlesnake was there because grandfather told it to be. Everything connected. They stood together at the water's edge, listening to loons call across the distance. Somewhere in the darkness, an owl hooted, and Ayanna smiled. Owl says someone new is coming, she translated. Someone who needs what we offer. How can you tell what an owl is saying? Same way you know which trees are ready for cutting, she replied. You listen with more than ears. The next morning brought proof of her words. A young white woman arrived at the clinic, her face bruised, her arm broken, her eyes holding the same desperate hope that Ayanna's had held that day by the lake. Behind her walked an elderly native man, supporting her with gentle dignity. We heard, the woman said simply, that this is place where healing happens. All kinds of healing. Ayanna exchanged glances with Kestrel, seeing in his eyes the same recognition she felt. Another story was beginning, another bridge waiting to be built. All kinds of healing, she confirmed, opening the clinic door wider. Come in, both of you. Let's see what's possible. As the couple entered, Ayanna caught sight of their reflection in the window, herself and Kestrel, healthy and whole, surrounded by the life they had built together. The lonely lumberjack and the paralyzed woman were gone, replaced by people who had learned that the most profound healing comes not from medicine or magic, but from love patient enough to build new worlds one careful step at a time. The story that had begun with a cry in the wilderness had become a song of hope that would echo through generations, carried forward by children who belonged everywhere because they had been taught that love creates its own belonging. And in the forest around their clinic, the trees whispered approval, their voices joining the ancient conversation between earth and sky, past and future, broken and whole.